corruption in ASEAN, Association Southeast Asian Nations, we don't have a magic solution actually. So if you want to listen to me, the solutions for the corruptions that already presented by the corruption issue already presented by the previous speakers, I don't have the magic solution. I'm sorry, but I think we could identify the issues. You could identify the problems, and at the same time, we could also highlight some efforts that already conducted by some countries in Southeast Asia, and then hopefully we can have an imaginations how ASEAN without corruptions at the end. So the main issue is, as has been discussed by previous speaker, I think there's Nick and Cynthia agree with this, that corruption is principally a symptom of bad governance. Corruption cannot coexist with the rule of law. But of course, then the issue is whether ASEAN members, the 10 ASEAN members, have a good governance or not, whether they have the rule of law or not. That's the main issue. And then many scholars looking at corruptions in Asia, they said that this is an endemic, systemic. Other scholars will say that this is systemic and systematic corruption. And then despite the economic gains, poverty gaps increase. So what went wrong with us? And there's also a general recognition that corruption is a problem. So what should we do about this issue? And it's nearly 8 p.m. in Melbourne right now. So it's a dinner time for me actually. So if you see that I'm a little bit slow, then you know why. Okay, first we look at the corruption perception index. So from my slide here, you can see the from 2016, 2017, and 2018. But if we go to the next slide, you can see the last 2 years here, 2019 and 2020. You can see that corruption in Asia, there are some countries who are really good, like Singapore, that's ranking number 3, number 4 in 2019, and then number 3 in 2020. So this is really a good achievement. And then we can really proud that one of Asian country could reach number 3. But if you look at others, there are many different achievement here. So Malaysia dropped from 51 in 2019 to number 57 in 2020. Indonesia also dropped from number 85 to number 102. Vietnam also drops. Philippines only 2 points test, so it's a good one, I think. So, but still is more than 100 here, 113 in 2019 and 115 in 2020. So then from this thing, we can see that the problem here, that there are one country is really good in dealing with anti-corruption. There are also countries in Asia who are still struggling to deal with corruption issues. So we don't have a magic solutions that can be used for all Asian countries. What we can do is we can learn from each other, and hopefully it's like a building blocks. We can develop a better good governance systems. But then there is always an excuse whenever we talk about corruption in Asia. They said that there is a culture of corruption. We could not have a solution for corruption in Asia because the culture allows the practice of corruption. is it true? That's the big questions. There's a story from Professor Bruce Markle when he traveled to Indonesia, and then he was having a meal with several prominent attorneys, and then the discussion, according to Professor Markle, drifted towards nepotism, which he would classify as a form of corruption. So nepotism is like when you put your family or your friends into several positions uh, without following the procedure, without following the correct procedure. And surprisingly, those attorneys didn't see nepotism that way. It is not part of corruptions. And then one attorney said that, well, what else is power good for? Right? So there's because it is so difficult to achieve a position, and when you achieve a position, that's because your big family supported you. They pray for you, they support for you, even they fund for you. So when you reach the position, then you need to return back all the prayer or the support by your family. That's why the nepotism is part of the culture. So that's one of the issue. Then people say it is difficult to combat corruption. We don't have a solution because it is embedded in the culture of Asia. Some of them also compare how we do business in Asia. So in Australia or in also in other countries, in other Western countries, in order to sign the contract, you can have a 1 hour meeting. Then at the end of the meeting, you can sign the contract if you're happy or if you can walk away. But if you do business in Asia, you could not do that. First, there'll be a conversation, informal conversation of a coffee. You need to meet the businessman in Asia in coffee. And then they will talk about the family, they will talk about your pets. They need to trust you first. So they try to find a chemistry between them and you. And then then the expectation is that you also tell them about your family, your pet. Then if there's a chemistry, they will invite you to have a dinner, maybe in their house or in the restaurant. If it's a dinner in their house, the expectation is that you will not come in empty hands. You need to bring something as a gift. Again, they don't see this is like a bribery. This is like a culture of appreciation. And then during dinner, they will invite you also to bring your partner. They will introduce you to their family. It's like they're welcoming you to their family. And then once they can trust you, and then once they can see that they can get along with you, then they will say, okay, we're going to meet again tomorrow morning in my office, and we're going to sign the contract. Then they're going to shake hands. So it is a long process. This is part of the culture. And then that's why then some people will say it is impossible to remove corruption entirely in Asia because the culture is embedded there in the corruptions. Well, I beg to disagree. We use culture as an explanation, not as a justification. Right? So this is a different approach. If we use as a justification, and then we say that, well, there is nothing we can do. This is culture. But if we use as an explanation, then we can say that, well, we can understand where this is coming from, but we could not legalize this practice. And even so, when we talk about the culture, it's a dynamics, right? The culture is dynamics. 15, 20 years ago would be different with the current era. So those who said that we could not combat corruption in Asia because of the culture of corruptions, I think they miss to see that the corruption is dynamics, and then actually we could change the culture. Maybe it is not one night, it's not an overnight solution. It's a long-term solution, but at least if we see that way, then we can change the culture through the education, for instance, through the informations, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then another question is, if really there is an Asian values of corruption that were to blame, how do we explain then the different levels of corruption in Asian countries? Like I already put on my previous slide about the corruption perception index, there's a Pakistan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, and Indonesia. So if the argument of culture is right, then surely Singapore will not reach number 3 in the corruption perception index, for instance. So that's why then if we look at the data, the argument about we could not combat corruption because of culture is not justified. How about democracy? I think previous speaker, Professor Nick, already touched this. Corruption and democracy. Is it true that democracy is a powerful tool to reduce corruption? Well, again, if you look at the data, Singapore is not a full democratic country, but successfully can reduce its corruption level. Singapore ranked number 3, Australia, a democratic country, number 11, even US, number 25th. Right? So it means that, well, maybe it's not democracy that we need to reduce the corruption. That's the argument. So what do we need? We need a strong leadership. That's why Singapore is not a full democratic country, but successfully reduced its corruption level because there's a strong leadership in Singapore. But if we use the same argument, how about North Korea? North Korea is the lowest rank, is number 172 in 2020. And then we know that in North Korea, they have a strong leader there, but the corruption is really high. So, so then there is a big question here, the relationship between corruption and democracy. And another issue is corruption and religion. Does religion matter? The assumption is that, well, if the country establish their religious law, then the corruption level will drop. Take examples of Islamic countries. If they cut the hands of the thief, cut the hands of the corrupt people, then the assumptions that the corruption level will be reduced significantly. But the data says that the Arab Saudi, who established a Sharia, including Islamic criminal law, hudud, sit in the position of 52nd, right? And then Brunei Darussalam sit in the position of 35th. They try to apply the hudud, but they postpone it, Brunei Darussalam. And other countries like United Emirates Arabs reach 21st. Syria, even worse than North Korea, it's 178. Italy and Philippines, they follow Catholics, but they differ in the position. Italy 52nd and Philippines in 115. Brazil also follows Catholic, but they reach also 94. So then we need to to look at other elements. Religion itself still important, especially in Asia, but we could not use religious argument here to say that, well, unless you follow religion strictly, then you could not combat corruption. So the data differs on this. Then we have to be careful to follow the arguments about relationship between anti-corruption and religion here. Corruption and economy. Some might argue that, well, Singapore is a rich country. Brunei is a rich country. That's why then they reach a good ranking in corruption perception index. But then Cambodia and Laos, because they are poor Asian countries, then they reach ranking 160 and 134 respectively. Is it true then there is a relationship between corruption and economy here? Well, we have two conflicting situations between corruption and poverty. They unfortunately go hand in hand on one hand, on one level. And then where people are forced to bribe to get essential services like health and water, corruption is part of survival kit. So then, yes, there is a relationship between corruption and poverty. But then there is also a problem if we only look at the poverty issues here, because there are also international financial institutions like IMF, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, that puts some money into those poor countries. Right. So if the assumption is that they don't have money, that's why then there's a corruption. But the other thinking saying, well, if they don't have money, then they will not corrupt because they don't have something that they can corrupt. In fact, the poor countries, they get money from foreign aid, but then the government use the money for their own benefit. Then there's a question, why should taxpayers in the richer countries be asked to support the lavish lifestyles of the kleptocrats in corrupt states, right? So why then Australia, UK or US, for instance, give financial aid to Asian countries if they know that some of the money will be used by government for their personal benefits. Right? So again, there's an issue here between corruption and economy. And corruption and prosperity here, whether there is a relationship between income and corruption. Because if that's the case, then why don't we increase the salary of government officer? We increase the salary of judges, we increase the salary of the attorneys, we increase the salary of the police, then there will be no corruptions. Is it right? Is this the solution to increase the salary? Well, it works well in Singapore, but not in Indonesia. In Singapore, the salary of the prime minister is one of the highest salary in the world. But in Indonesia, once you increase the salary, it means that you also increase the amount that you're going to bribe the officer. So if the salary level is only, let's say, $3,000, then the money that you need to bribe the officer, it could be around 20% or even 50% of $3,000 of their salary. But then if their salary is increased to $10,000, then you only pay $1,000 bribery. They will refuse it because now they already have $10,000 of their salary. That means that you need to pay more for them. So the increase of salary will also increase the amount that you need to bribe the officer. So again, there is no magic solution. Yep. Okay, how about penal code? What if we increase the penalties? Right? If increasing the salary will not work for all Asian countries, how about if we increase the penalties, right? From higher penalty to capital punishment, for instance. Will it work? Well, the problem is that once you increase the penalties, then you also increase the transaction, the negotiations behind the bar. Right? And also, this also could be dangerous, increasing the penalties, because the government can use this higher penalty, let's say capital punishments, to punish their political opposition or political opponents. They can have a politicization of this anti-corruption effort. Yes, and this could be dangerous. And how about the other proposal of reversal of the burden of proof? So usually in the criminal law, if you get accused of doing corruptions, then the government or the attorney or the police needs to provide evidence, right? Because they are the one who charge you with the penalty offenses, right? But reversal of the burden of proof means that anyone who is or has been maintaining a standard of living, right, which is significantly disproportionate to his present or past non-legal income, and who is unable to produce a satisfactory explanation for this, could be charged under corruption law. So let's say that your salary is only $3,000 per month, but you have a BMW in your garage, and you are a judge. Then using this reversal of the burden of proof, then you could be arrested, you could be charged of corruption, unless you can prove that this BMW, you get it from, for instance, from your parents, right? Your parents pass away, and then there's you inherited some of their money. So then use that money, you buy BMW. So this is reversal of the burden of proof. It works well in Hong Kong and Singapore. But then when I asked the attorneys in Indonesia, why then in Indonesia they don't have this reversal of the burden of proof? And then the answer, one attorney said to me, well, Nadir, have you ever visited our parking space in our Attorney General office? I said, yes, why? You could see many luxury cars there. You can name it. We have it. And then we will be the first victim if we have reversal of the burden of proof. Because clearly we could not afford those luxury cars using our salary. So that's why they don't want to propose this reversal of the burden of proof, because they will be the first victims. So despite the fact that this solution works quite well in Hong Kong and Singapore, does not mean that we could easily transfer this model to other countries. Okay, and then why don't we just go to the public then about corruption in order to find the solutions? Then we need to understand, why do people accept the corruptions? Some of the answer is that this is a shortcut to long bureaucracy. Right? So we need to, if we want to apply for a license from government, for instance, if we follow all the rules, it will take 21 days. And there is no guarantee that at the end of 21 days, we could get the license or the permit. Right? But then if we pay the money, then in 3 hours, we can get the permit license. So this is a shortcut to long bureaucracy. And that's why then there is no choice for people except to accept the corruptions. Right? They want to accept the corruptions because there is a benefit for them to bribe the officer. Another answer, the other answer is that, well, this is as business as usual. I mean, it has been a practice a lot in the last 50, 100 years. Why we want to change it? And as long as it is clear how much that we should pay, whether it is 2% or 5%, we'll be fine. The businessman will get annoyed if there is no standard of fees that they need to pay for the officer. If in one department they need to pay 2%, in the other department they need to pay 10%, then they say that this is not right. But if they know that beforehand that they have to pay 2% more or 5% more, then they can put this cost as a part of production cost, right? And then at the end they said that we don't have any problem, because then we are going to increase the price of the products or services. So their own people will pay for this, for the corruption that the officer received, not us. We are a businessman. We know how to calculate, so we are fine with the corruption. So that's some of the perceptions they get from the from the public about corruptions. And again, with this in mind, how we provide a solution there, right? So I'll come to that later on. So now we need to look at, there are three levels of corruptions, right? There's top level, mid level, and low level. Then the solution to each level will be different. We could not have one magic solution, as I already stated many times. So with the top level, this is what they call it greed corruptions. They already have a good salary, they already have a good life, right? Like for instance, a chief justice of Constitutional Court in Indonesia arrested of corruptions, or the speaker of the parliament. They're already rich people, but why they still receive the money? This is what we call it due to greed. This is greed corruption. And with this level, the solution will be different. Mid-level, we have a systemic corruption. It means that if you work in the government, it doesn't matter whether you take the money, whether you are corrupt or not, you are part of the team, and the team is corrupt, right? So this is systemic corruption. Even if you don't take the money by yourself, but then you will get the money because they were going to spread the amount, and everyone will be happy, right? And then they can continue the practice. This is what's called systemic corruptions. But then again, the solution will be different for the mid-level. For the low level, this is a petty corruption based on need, not greed, right? So because of the salary level of policemen in Indonesia is very low, for instance, then if you're driving and then you break the laws, like for instance, if you pass the traffic lights, the red light, then usually in Indonesia it's current practice that you're going to give the money to the police, and the police will accept it, not because they are greedy, but based on the need. They have the low level salary. So with these three different levels, the solution would also be different. So let us look at the solution in each level. So for the top level, the method is frying the big fish. So when there is a culture of engaging in corrupt acts with impunity, the only way to begin breaking it up is for a number of major corrupt figures to be convicted and punished. So for the anti-corruption agencies or for the attorney, then they need to target some of the figures in the government, whether it is the prime minister, the minister, or any other top positions, to be convicted and punished. This will give the message that other minister, this will give a message and also a warning, so then other minister and other top position will not do the same. Right? So frying the big fish. So the greedy people will think twice to accept the money because of the warning here. But this will only work, this solution, if there is a political will from the ruling party. or the relevant government officials. Right? But as Cynthia explained to us, the money politics is the biggest problem. So then if they don't have a political will here, then certainly this kind of solution will not work. And then we need also to setting up a special anti-corruption commissions. Why we need to have these special anti-corruption commissions that we already have in Singapore and Hong Kong, and also in some other countries? That's because the perceptions that there is a low salary for the police and for the public prosecutor, and they have limited powers. So we set up these special anti-corruption agencies or commissions. We give them good money, and then we also give them more power, so then they can frying the big fish. So this the strategy at the top level. The strategy of the mid level, which is a systemic and systematic corruptions, then a good governance. Right? Here we come about the transparency, accountability, rule of law, clear regulation, bureaucratic reform. This is the solution. Right? If, for instance, we try only to catch the fish here without having bureaucratic reform, transparency, accountability, then in the long term it will not work at all. The strategy. So the strategy for catching the big fish is will work for the top level, but for the mid level, we need to have a good governance here. This is really the biggest effort for Asian governments to have transparency and accountability in order to deal with systemic and systematic corruption. So this is the solution for the mid level. And the solution for the low level, the petty corruption, is increasing the salary, especially for police, judges, the Department of Public Prosecutor, DPP, tax officer, teachers, and others, and so on. So, so you see that there are different solutions here. Depends on the level. Right, now some of the case studies that you can have here. In Thailand, I think Nick already mentioned about this. In Thailand, they have many independent organizations. The National Anti-Corruption Commission, the Election Commission, the Office of the Ombudsman, the Human Rights Commission, and others, and also the other non-state parties. But what went wrong with the system? Why has corruption not lessened, despite the fact that they already have these agencies? So many different agencies, and they have uncoordinated work, so it makes them less efficient. It's like what Nick already said to us. If there are too many rules, too many regulations, it's confusing, and then sometimes there is no clear rules about that, and even conflicting rules. The same happen with many agencies here. If too many different agencies dealing with corruption, then there will be an uncoordinated work and less efficiency. Okay, so I already have 3 minutes, so 3 minutes left. I'm sorry. So, and the agencies do not start out with a clean slate, inflexible rules, political interference, and no strong, proactive, and continuous political support. So there is also, this is Indonesian anti-corruption codes, so I will not touch it because I don't have time for this. Okay, so this is the conclusions. We did corruption needs to be dealt with in a holistic manner. Good laws, good, strong, and fair judicial system, and so on and so forth here. But then back to the questions about the Asean and corruption itself. Right, I give you the link here about the Asean Pack. So this Asean Pack is the agencies, anti-corruption agencies in some ASEAN members already signed the agreement to have a collaboration. Right, then you can check the website there. I think Cynthia already also mentions about the ASEAN members have ratified the UN Convention Against Corruption, and talking about the political security community blueprint. I can also add about Asian Economic Community. So this is like a single market, it's like an EU. You already signed it at the end of 2015, but up until now we don't see much about this AEC, and their focus is more on the economic. And my last slide, here's why we don't have a magic solution for the ASEANs, because in ASEAN members, the 10 ASEAN members, they have different legal systems, they have different languages, they have different economic achievements, different cultures and religions. Some of them even consider like a safe haven. So despite the fact that Singapore is one of the top 3 countries in dealing with corruptions, but many corrupt people in Indonesia think Singapore is a safe haven because there is no extraditions. Once they corrupt Indonesia, then they can run away and then live in Singapore, and the police, innocent police, cannot touch them. And for the AEC, as an Asian Economic Community, there is no law enforcement because they really focus on the economy. So I finished my presentation. Hopefully we can have a discussion. Thank you very much, Tess and others.